a white British male. All my family are white British. I'm old, retired, middle class. I'm an accountant. I've been an accountant in industry, so people would call me a capitalist. I live in a democracy, so they would call me a Democrat, and I've had a Christian upbringing. So that's very bog standard English upbringing.
Okay.
What I'm saying is based on research that's taken me over 5 years and has been put into a book which is almost completely finished, called Prisoners of Beliefs. And what it says in a nutshell is that we all have a being, an identity, we have experiences, and we have a culture. The culture is handed down to us, and we either modify it or live within it, but it actually forms the way we respond to the world and the way we interpret the world. So if we go back to me, white British, one of the comments that I would make is white people are a minority in the world. They always have been. There's never been a time when the majority of people in the world are white-skinned.
Yeah.
But they have created the world economic system that we all live in today. And this has given them enormous power and enormous opportunity, if you like, to write the issue with that, which is very central to tonight, is that inside that script there is always some truth, but also there are some myths which have been handed down over a long time and are accepted as normal. And this is not always the case. One example of that is people are sometimes very sensitive about how they're described. So, for example, you can call somebody a coloured person or a person of colour, or you call them black, or you call them white, or whatever. The thing I object to is when there's a universal word which says non-white. And the problem with that is assumes that white is the norm, and then everything is a variation of that. That's absolute rubbish. And in fact, historically, everyone was dark-skinned, and it's the white people who are in fact their skin has changed colour as they've moved north, and it needed to change colour to absorb more vitamin D. So actually, we are the old black.
Yeah.
All the white people in the world are the old black. And in terms of their history, their identity, and everything about them. The problem is that what people do, there's a very well-known phrase, the pen is mightier than the sword. But if you look at power structures, people seize power with the sword and then they justify it with a pen. And what that means is, as they, having got power, they then control things, they then tell the stories, and those stories are then handed down, and often that they are accepted as being the truth. The reality is that these are not always accurate. I went to school and I learned about the Second World War, etc. And it was many years after I'd left school that I understood the big battles in the Second World War were between Russia and Germany.
Yeah.
Not the British, not the Americans. So Hollywood, etc., was creating a complete distortion, as it always has done. The next thing is capitalism. Capitalism has developed the humanity. It's advanced humanity enormously in terms of the range of uses it makes of the world. It's raised the quality of our life and the length of our life for hundreds of millions of pounds. But it also has some major flaws, and these are very serious downsides. Firstly, capitalism tries to standardize everything. So they like to standardize market where the same product is available in many, many markets. They like to standardize processes. They like to standardize the supply chain. And in that way, they then use vast quantities of particular things from the ground. And in the process, they're destroying the world. Another social, economic aspect is that in this process, we today have created more economic slaves than ever before. And we defend ourselves, i.e., if you like, the people in the West who enjoy the benefits, defend ourselves by saying, yes, but we have democracies these days. Reality is democracy stops at Dover. And you've only got to go over to Calais to understand that immediately. It hits you in the face. Another thing which is very central, if you look at Christianity, Christianity is a belief system. There are lots of other belief systems. It has been adapted. It's been adopted by Europeans, who then set up the institutions, who then control how it is interpreted and how people are allowed to behave within that. For example, church and state are very closely tied in all the countries. So the Queen is the head of the Church of England. If you go to Israel, the Jews control the Jewish faith, but the capital is in Israel. If you take the Catholics, the centre of the Catholic power is Rome. And the popes are promoted by people within the Catholic Church, and they are almost exclusively Italian. Most of them are from Rome, and prior to the present Pope, there hasn't been a Catholic, a non-European Pope since 742. It's been completely controlled from the centre. Now, the impact of these is that state and religion are hand in hand, and they work together very closely. They have done for centuries, and that's how the church has the power that it's got, and it gives the people in charge, the kings or whoever, the authority of the world. Now, all of this may be interesting and historical, but is actually highly relevant to our role today. If people in the West maintain their current belief system, we're white supremacy, for example, or we gave the world Christianity, or we invented the Industrial Revolution and advanced the rest of the world. If we maintain that as our belief system, we will accelerate our own destruction. We're doing everything that is completely wrong and is against nature. And one of the problems is that nature, we are below nature, we are part of nature, but man has tried to put himself above nature. And even in the Bible, right at the beginning, it says that God provided the animals for humans. The reality is completely the opposite, that the animals created the environment, and all the creatures that have evolved over hundreds of millions of years created the plants and the animals and the oxygen in the air, which is absolutely vital to our existence. And yet we somehow think, A, we don't value it unless it has a monetary benefit, and B, we put ourselves above nature. We try to. So I can live in my house and I don't need to go out of my house. I can get my food delivered. I can get my clothes delivered. I can get restaurant meals delivered, everything I need. And I'm completely blind to the destruction that my consumption is causing in the world. And this is highly relevant to people in this country. And it goes back generations to the myths that have been passed down over many, many generations, and is why we have major problems today. And unless we learn, we will continue to destroy life forms, and we will make the world unlivable for us. So anyway, that's a long monologue. I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, there is lots of things I can go into, including racism and lots of social issues.
Yeah.
But the central one is that humans are destroying the world for ourselves. We're not destroying the world. we won't destroy the world. We can't destroy the world, but we're destroying it for ourselves. And when you look at the television and you see desperately poor, starving people, and you see environmental changes, this is humans killing humans.
Yeah.
And it's completely immoral. Utterly.
Definitely agree with that, 100%. One thing I did want to ask you about is when you spoke about non-white. Since I've been young as a child, I suppose, I've always had a problem and an issue with being called a minority. Would you say that's a similar kind of phrasing? You know, when if you're black of any type, we're usually called minority. If you're white, I suppose you're called a majority, especially in this country. Would you suggest that's the same kind of thing?
Yes. I mean, this is where if you like, the language that we use and the way we interpret it gives us an understanding, but it's not actually that accurate.
Yeah.
So, for example, everybody is a minority. You can say, for example, white people are a minority. They're also a shrinking minority in the world. You can say, I live in England and therefore I'm part of the majority. But if you then say, well, I'm male, instantly, and maybe I'm in the majority or maybe I'm not. If you then say I'm old, I'm absolutely not in the majority. If you say I'm a pensioner, I'm absolutely not in the majority. So all of us as individuals are minorities within society.
Yeah.
The problem is how we treat other individuals, and many of our beliefs are completely inappropriate for the realities. I mean, one of the big myths is we British are independent. We are absolutely not independent, and we never have been.
Yeah.
But as time goes on, we're increasingly dependent. So, for example, the supply chains, the longer they get, the more certain it is that there will be disasters. If you look at the division of wealth, it is utterly immoral that the West take out the resources and get nearly all of the benefit because they devised and run and control the system. I mean, a good example of that is COVID.
Yeah.
Firstly, it came along and it hit us. It was the people in the West who were in their laboratories who designed the vaccines that we need. They then kept the vaccines to themselves and they didn't disperse them. I mean, there is no justification for that. And now we have another variation which is coming in, which is attacking us. One of the problems is the top 10 countries in the world produce 80% of the manufactured goods, and it's the manufactured goods which is the end product of most of what's consumed, which gives you control. And the West completely have a one-sided sharing of that. So they'll take the raw materials, they'll then process them into a finished product, and then they'll sell them back to people all over the world. Now, that is massively unfair. So you get an African working on $2 a day, producing materials, which then go into the supply chain, which then feed multi-billion-dollar multinationals, who then take nearly all of the profit. I mean, a simple example is if you take coffee, the trading centre in the world for coffee is Switzerland. Most trading centre is Hamburg. Now, the logic would be if you want to reduce the carbon footprint, for example, you don't take materials from Africa, ship them 12,000 miles to China, produce a finished product, which certainly isn't environmentally friendly these days, and then ship it another 12,000 miles to Europe or America. What should happen is that where the raw materials are, you should then produce the finished products. So it should go directly from Africa to Europe, to the Middle East, to South America and North America, all of which is nearer Africa than China is.
Makes sense.
And Yeah, I mean, this is simple logic, and because the people in the West control the systems, they have no interest in it.
Mm.
But if people are aware of the facts, then Africans should be developing their own manufacturing, their own processes.
Yeah.
Um, and it's completely immoral that we treat Africans as economic slaves and then say we have no responsibility because they're democracies and we can't interfere.
Mm.
You look at the economics of it. The Europeans went over to Africa originally for all the resources that they could take out, and they developed some amazing things: railway systems, roads, ports, airports, all sorts of things. All of that was geared to the removal of materials. When it came to social things like education and health, they spent almost nothing on it, and they didn't care.
Mm.
And their actions resulted in the death of millions in many countries. You look at things today, the Africa is weighed down with debt to the West, which is completely immoral. It's actually historically wrong because the West have underpaid for materials always. They've never paid Africa the money, the value of the materials extracted. So, and when they make loans, and particularly if they can't pay them, they made them to corrupt leaders who then often embezzle the money. So the African population is paying the interest now and repayments on loans that they never received the benefit for,
Yeah.
ever.
Mm.
And who should take the hit? It should be the people lending the money. It should be the West. There are so many social issues, all of which need to be spoken about in an open environment because these issues need to be tackled and people need to hone down on what's actually true. And if they are true, they're true for everybody,
Yeah.
not just for me or you or whatever. They're fundamental truths. And it's the way our society operates and it trying to tackle the key issues that we need to address in order for us to preserve ourselves. We're running an unsustainable economy where we are treating nature as something to be picked up and used, and we don't even understand how nature works.
Yeah.
We don't even know most of the plant. Well, a great many of the plants, a great many of the insects, a great many of the creatures in the sea. We have no idea how they interact, and yet we're treating everything as like a mono agriculture where you can wipe everything out and just grow one thing.
Mm.
And in the history of the world, it's never been like that.
Yeah.
And it won't work.
Definitely.
So those are quite, devastating conclusions, and whoever you are need to be aware of the facts and address them. Many of the British are actually extremely ignorant about the facts, and some of them just don't want to know.
Mm.
And that's a very sad comment, but it is true.
Yeah, definitely. So, I guess the next point is what can we do about it? I suppose is a good question. And also, what made you kind of want to look into this?
Yeah, I mean, what made me look into it is I started to do some work from charities in the local area, about 10 charities,
Yeah.
but I also helped some local people, and it was an education, and I really wanted to improve the lives of people, and it took me a bit of time to sort of the cogs to work, but I felt what's the best way of helping people? It must be to address the issues that determine their behaviour. Because if you look at behaviour, it's passed down through the generations.
Yeah.
So you have the same pattern of behaviour, which goes back, decades or centuries, frequently centuries, even if it's inappropriate. A good example is if you look at the way that the European churches operate,
Yeah.
not only are they European based, but they're totally dominated by men.
Mm.
And that goes back to the creation of the original Bible in 397 AD. which is the basis of the King James Bible. You've got God the Father, you've got Jesus, the Son of God, you've got 12 disciples, all men, and all the women were then relegated to supportive and subordinate roles. So Mary had to be a virgin. Mary Magdalene, historically, some people believe, was the senior disciple and was Jesus' girlfriend. Now, I don't know whether that's true, but the role of women was relegated from that moment, and that's 4th century. And is still a problem today. It shows how we look at the way the Americans, slavery was banned, abolished in 1865 after the American Civil War, is still a major problem today because we pass the social habits down through the generations. And what we need to do is to look at the facts and then work out what are the solutions, and that needs to be an open discussion. In terms of what we can do, I think we need to be very vocal with our politicians. I think we need to change our personal lifestyle. Our consumption in Europe and, say, in this country is probably 40% too high. And we need to redress the imbalance, the economic imbalances with regards to where we buy everything that we use. We will get migrants coming over for generations until they are in a position where their lives are not under threat. And as long as they have those situations, we will have migrants coming over here. And we have a responsibility, but not just to sop up the next boatload of people coming across the channel. We need to correct the fundamental imbalances in our society. And that Western companies actually grossly underpay and understate what they take out from the ground. A lot of these things are self-reporting. So they reduce the quality, they reduce the quantity, and they massively underpay. And then they pay no tax in Africa, or a tiny bit. Whereas you can say, well, they don't pay corporation tax in this country. But if you're any of the big companies, if you're Amazon, for example, you employ lots of people. They pay national insurance, and the employer it goes to the government. They pay tax. You have a building, you pay council tax on that. You pay rent on it. You go out, you pay VAT on everything, and VAT on yourselves. The government here collects lots of tax from companies here, even if they don't pay any corporation tax. Corporation tax is only 7% of the tax collected by the government. It's actually very minor, and nearly all of that comes from British companies. You compare that with, somebody working on $2 a day. How can the government have the revenue from that to create the health needs and the education and develop their society, including their manufacturing capacity and everything else they need? It's utterly impossible. So they are economic prisoners, and it's immoral, it's wrong, and we still support it today. It's just, to my mind, that if the minimum wage in Africa was 2/3 of the minimum wage in this country, they would have far greater economic power as a continent than say, the British. And probably the whole of Europe. And that's where the fundamental issue is.
Definitely. And I suppose after hearing all of that, do you think it will ever change?
I'd like to do more of what I'm doing. I'm never going to change my mind because I learn more every day. Then your opinions advance, but the more I learn, the more it only substantiates the things I learned before. You tweak some things aren't quite right, and I'm very happy for people to say that's completely wrong. But if they do that, then okay, you disagree, On what basis? Because I've looked at a lot of the facts, and these are, you can Google virtually any of this stuff I've said in an afternoon. You know, this isn't, it's all evidence, but it's not put together to actually make people sufficiently aware of how privileged we are and how much injustice there is, and it impacts on, including, for example, the attitude of migrants in this country. Many of them are Christian, many of them are very grateful for being over here, and they want to do well, but and the law gives them some protection, but this is my personal opinion. The political parties, particularly the Conservatives, are very mindful of the ignorance of the British public, and we're talking about the majority here, and that's the reason that they have many of the policies that they've got, which I think start off on the right basis, but then they try and be tough and appeal to the majority and say, well, you know, we're not having scroungers or people on boats. The only reason they're on a boat is because the British government have closed off any legal way for them to come across. Again, that is completely immoral. You know, we have no moral high ground if we force people to either suffer, go through horrendous experiences, and maybe risk their lives to try and get somewhere safe. It's just appalling.
Definitely. You know, everything you're saying, I'm sitting here and I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. So how can people get the book? Again, I really want people to understand and get to know the book before we come to the end of the interview. How can they do that?
Okay. I need to finish. Every time there's a piece of news, it slightly changes the story, and I need to go through some of the wording. But I hope to get it to the printers next week, and I hope it's out before Christmas. In which case, it will be available on Amazon. I hope it's in local bookshops and on websites. So. There'll also be, local publicity, radio, press, and anything else. A lot of charities are aware of me and the fact that I'm writing the book. So I think I hope that that they will have copies, and if people want to go there and buy them, I'm happy to sell them at a reduced price. So the idea is to get ideas out there, get people thinking. Much more than I won't make a profit. That's not the objective. It's to try and give people things to think about in relationship to their own lives.
Definitely,
because there isn't one answer. There's we all have to find our own way based on the problems we have in our own lives, and in some ways our beliefs are valuable, but in some ways we perpetuate the problem.
Definitely, I agree with that.
And so it's a way of scratching your head and having a think.
Why not? And we definitely need to think about all these different things. And again, I wanted to say thank you, for coming on, talking the truth, talking about what you found. And again, it's been appreciated. Part 2, definitely looking already forward to part 3. What are you saying?
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. I've enjoyed it, and I will continue doing this because it's the most important thing that I can do.
Definitely agree with that, and keep doing what you're doing, because what you're finding out is important for people to actually understand what's really going on out there. So thank you for looking into it deeper.
No, that's my pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
Anytime, always welcome.
Okay, bye Katrina.
Bye.